Welcome to our deep dive into trauma and healing.
Mhm.
As nurses, this is something that I think we all wrestle with at some point, right? So
Yeah.
we've got two incredible books to unpack. We've got Francine Shapiro's Getting Past Your Past, which is very practical, lots of techniques in there, and then The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk,
Mhm.
which that one goes deep into the neuroscience, really
Mm.
kind of unpacks that.
Yeah.
So I guess by the end of this deep dive, we hope that you'll be able to kind of spot the impact of trauma a little bit more, understand the complexities, and maybe even explore some ways to help with the healing process.
Well, it's interesting because Shapiro, in her book, she really highlights how trauma sometimes it's hiding in plain sight, isn't it?
Yeah.
She's got this story about Justine. She's this young woman, successful, doing well in life, but every time a boyfriend breaks up with her, she just falls apart.
Oh, God, yeah.
And it turns out that it goes right back to this experience she had as a child during a storm, and it left her with this, really deep-seated fear of abandonment.
It's amazing, isn't it, how these things that happen, maybe they seem small at the time,
Yeah.
they could have such a ripple effect through our lives.
Absolutely.
And Shapiro, she calls them unprocessed memories.
Right?
They're kind of stuck there in the brain, holding on to all the emotion and the beliefs from that original event.
Exactly, yeah. And they get triggered often by, by something that seems completely unrelated,
Yeah.
on the surface at least. And if you think about your patients, how many of them might be carrying around these hidden burdens, right?
Yeah.
And suddenly their reactions to, well, to anything really, pain, medication, even just a change in routine might make a lot more sense if you view it through the lens of trauma.
Absolutely. And it's not just, personal stuff. It's relationships as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, Shapiro, she tells this story of Barry and Trudy, this couple, and they're in this constant cycle of hurt. He's trying so hard to please her, and she's always kind of angry and demanding. I
Yeah.
mean, do you think that that dynamic could be linked back to their own past traumas?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a really good example of how unaddressed trauma can really sabotage relationships. It creates these really painful, repetitive cycles, and it can even affect how patients interact with their loved ones and, well, even their healthcare providers too, right?
Oh,
I mean, Kolke talks about this as the compulsion to repeat. It's
right.
almost as if we're unconsciously recreating the dynamics that hurt us in the past.
Right.
The brain's trying to master that old threat by replaying it.
Gosh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And this isn't, a rare thing, is it? Because Vanderkool in his book, he has this statistic. It's quite startling. He says 1 in 5 Americans were sexually abused as a child, and 1 in 4 were beaten by a parent. I mean, those are huge numbers.
Yeah, they're really sobering, aren't they? And it's a reminder that trauma is pervasive. It's not, something that happens out there to other people. It's in our communities, our families, and it will undoubtedly impact many of the people that you care for as a nurse. It's not just a psychological issue either.
Yeah.
Trauma has a very real biological impact on us. Think about that constant fight or flight or freeze
The
response.
body's always on high alert, kind of bracing itself for danger.
Precisely. And that takes a huge toll on the nervous system. And so that chronic stress can show up as all sorts of physical symptoms, chronic pain, digestive problems, even asthma. So when a patient comes to you with these conditions, it's crucial to consider that trauma might be a contributing factor.
It really highlights how our bodies, they keep the score of our experiences, even when our minds can't consciously access them.
Yeah, that's a really important takeaway. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, I think it challenges us to look beyond just the symptoms we see in our patients.
Yeah.
We need to see the whole person, their whole story, and approach their care with a deeper understanding of their internal world, really.
And Vanderkolk talks about attunement
Yes.
and how crucial these attuned interactions with caregivers are, especially for children. Can you sort of explain a little bit about what he means by that?
Yeah, he uses this beautiful anecdote, actually, about a mother and baby interaction.
Right.
And he describes it as a cycle of delight, rupture, and repair. So the baby pulls the mother's hair and she reacts with anger.
Yeah.
But then she repairs that rupture by, soothing and reconnecting with the baby. And it shows that even when there are these moments of upset, we can always come back to a place of connection and safety.
And that sense of safety must be so essential for healthy development, right?
Absolutely. For a child, knowing that someone will be there to comfort them and help them regulate their nervous system is, well, it's fundamental, really.
How can we, as nurses, apply that concept of attunement in our practice?
Yeah.
Because it's not as simple as, holding hands and singing lullabies, is it?
Not necessarily, although there might be times when that's appropriate.
Yeah.
But it's more about being truly present with your patients. Really listening attentively and responding in a way that conveys genuine care and understanding. It's also about regulating your own nervous system
Okay.
so that you can be a source of calm and safety for them. I mean, you might be surprised by how therapeutic your presence alone can be.
I love that. It's such a powerful yet often overlooked aspect of care, isn't it?
It is.
We talk about the impact of trauma on emotions and relationships and physical health. What about memory?
Mm-hmm.
Because it seems like, trauma can make memories hazy or fragmented. Like Julian in The Body Keeps the Score.
Yeah,
He couldn't piece together um, a kind of coherent narrative of his trauma.
that's right. Trauma disrupts the way our brains process and store memories. It's not that the memories aren't there. They're often trapped in the emotional centers of the brain, making them, well, inaccessible to the conscious mind. And that's why some patients struggle to recall specific events, but, they experience these overwhelming emotions or physical sensations seemingly out of nowhere.
So it's like having a jigsaw puzzle with missing pieces. And the ones you do have, they don't quite fit together.
That's a great way to put it. And it can be incredibly frustrating for both patients and caregivers. But, these fragmented memories, they're not a sign of fabrication or exaggeration. They're a testament to the profound impact of trauma on the brain.
And Vander Kolk also talks about Nancy, who had a flashback during a routine medical procedure. So it seems that even seemingly harmless triggers can be kind of contaminated by past trauma.
Exactly. And that's why understanding a patient's trauma history is so crucial. It can help you anticipate potential triggers and respond in a way that minimizes their distress. You might even consider using gentle, reassuring language to explain procedures step by step, and that can help them feel more safe and in control.
Yeah, like creating a roadmap for the patient, guiding them through the experience so they don't feel overwhelmed. So if memories are fragmented and they're often trapped in the emotional centers of the brain, how do we even begin to address them? I mean, is traditional talk therapy enough?
That's where things get really interesting. Both Shapiro and van der Kolk, they highlight the limitations of traditional talk therapy when it comes to trauma. While talking about our experiences can be helpful, it doesn't always address those deeper body-based responses.
So what's the alternative?
Yeah.
Should we just bottle up our emotions and hope they disappear?
Definitely not. Expressing emotions is crucial, but it's about finding safe and regulated ways to process them. Van der Kolk talks about the power of finding our voice through narrative.
Mhm.
And he cites this research by James Pennebaker, which has shown that, writing or talking about traumatic experiences can have profound healing effects. It can help us regulate our emotions and integrate those fragmented memories into a more coherent narrative.
So just by encouraging our patients to share their stories, we can create a space for healing. But we're not, as nurses, we're not trained therapists, are we?
That's right. It's important to remember that your role is to provide a compassionate and supportive presence.
Right.
Listen without judgment, create a safe space for patients to express themselves, and then, connect them with qualified mental health professionals who can help them work through their trauma in a therapeutic setting.
So we can act as a bridge to further support, guiding them to the resources they need.
Yeah.
What about those deeper body-based responses that we've talked about?
Yeah.
How can we help patients who are trapped in those kind of fight, flight, freeze reactions, or who struggle with those physical symptoms like the chronic pain or digestive issues?
That's where van der Kolk introduces this concept of bottom-up therapies.
Okay.
And these focus on working with the body to regulate the nervous system and release those trapped emotions. Think about therapies like EMDR, yoga, or even neurofeedback.
EMDR. That's the one where they move their fingers back and forth, isn't it?
It is.
It sounds a bit unusual.
I know it might seem a bit strange, but it has shown incredible results for processing traumatic memories.
Okay.
Van der Kolk, he shares the story of Maggie, and she was able to access and process this deeply repressed memory through EMDR in a very safe and controlled way.
So EMDR can actually help patients kind of tap into those fragmented memories and reprocess them in a way that promotes healing.
Yeah, exactly. It's not about erasing the memories. It's about transforming them from, these debilitating burdens into integrated experiences. It's about helping patients reclaim control and find peace.
Wow, that's amazing. How can something like yoga help with trauma?
Well, yoga is a fantastic tool for regulating the nervous system and cultivating self-awareness. It helps people connect with their bodies, notice sensations, and learn to self-soothe. In his book, Vanderkolk shares the story of Annie, and she describes how yoga helped her manage her chronic anxiety and reconnect with her body after years of feeling disconnected and numb.
So yoga can be a pathway to feeling safe and grounded in our own bodies.
Precisely. And that sense of safety and grounding is essential for healing from trauma. It's about learning to trust our bodies again, to experience sensations without fear, and to reclaim our sense of agency, really.
Sounds like there's a whole world of alternative therapies out there that maybe we're not even aware of. What about neurofeedback?
Yeah.
That one sounds pretty high tech.
It is. It's a cutting edge approach that helps regulate brainwave activity. It's like giving the brain a workout, teaching it to shift into calmer, more focused states.
So instead of trying to kind of silence our thoughts or emotions, we're learning to manage them and find a sense of balance.
Exactly. And it's showing some really promising results for managing trauma symptoms like hyperarousal, anxiety, and difficulty concentrating.
Wow. This is so much to take in, but in a good way. It feels like a whole new perspective on healing is opening up.
And the exciting thing is this field is constantly evolving.
Yeah.
As we learn more about the brain and the impact of trauma, new therapies and approaches are emerging all the time.
Speaking of new approaches, what about using theater to heal from trauma?
Yeah, that's a fascinating area of exploration. Vanderkolk, he dedicates a whole chapter to this in his book, highlighting how theater can help trauma survivors embody emotions, connect with others, and find their voice.
So it's not just about watching a play; it's about actively participating in the process of creating and performing.
Yes, exactly. It's about using the body and the voice to express experiences that may be too difficult to put into words. It's about
Yeah.
connecting with others in a safe and creative space, and it's about finding a sense of agency and empowerment.
I can see how that could be incredibly cathartic and
Huh.
transformative. It's like stepping outside of ourselves, trying on different roles, and exploring our emotions in a structured and safe environment.
And it's not just for adults either.
Oh, right.
There are some amazing programs out there using theater to help children and adolescents who have experienced trauma.
So from yoga and EMDR to theater, there seems to be like a whole toolbox of alternative approaches that can complement the traditional talk therapy and medication.
Absolutely. And the key is to find what works best for each individual patient.
Yeah.
It's about embracing a holistic approach to healing that acknowledges the complex interplay between mind, body, and spirit.
This has been such an incredible deep dive so far, and we've only just scratched the surface.
Nine.
We've covered so much ground from understanding how trauma impacts our brains and bodies to exploring all these innovative therapies that can help us heal. Um, I think it's time for a little break to let everything we've discussed so far kind of sink in. We'll be back soon to explore even more fascinating insights from these incredible books, so stay tuned.
Welcome back. I'm glad we took that pause because now we're going to kind of delve into a bit more of a challenging aspect of trauma, and that's its connection to violence.
Yeah, it does feel
Mhm.
it feels kind of heavy, but I think it's an important conversation to have. So how do Shapiro and Vanderkolk kind of approach this link?
Well, they both acknowledge that individuals who've experienced trauma, particularly in childhood, are at a greater risk of engaging in violent behavior themselves.
Right, and I guess that makes sense. If you've grown up in an environment where violence is the norm, it's more likely to become your default response.
Exactly. Shapiro, she discusses this in the context of the criminal justice system, and she highlights the high prevalence of trauma among inmates. She even cites studies that connect head injuries during development to violent behavior later in life. It's a sobering reminder that violence often perpetuates more violence.
So are we saying that anyone who experiences trauma is destined to become violent?
Not at all. I think it's essential to remember that correlation doesn't equal causation.
Right.
So while trauma can increase the risk, it's certainly not a guaranteed outcome. I mean, many factors contribute to violent behavior, including, well, genetics, social environment, the support systems that are available to a person.
That's reassuring. It still kind of begs the question, though, how do we break this cycle?
Mm,
If we recognize that trauma can lead to violence, how can we prevent it from happening in the first place?
that's That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And I think it requires a multifaceted approach. I mean, early intervention is absolutely key. Providing robust support to families, addressing childhood adversity, creating safe and nurturing environments can have a profound impact.
And I guess we also need to kind of rethink how we perceive and react to violence. So instead of
Yeah,
simply punishing offenders, perhaps we should be addressing the underlying trauma that may be driving their actions.
precisely. Trauma-informed care needs to be integrated into every level of our society, from schools and hospitals to the justice system. It's about understanding how widespread trauma is and responding with compassion and empathy instead of judgment and punishment.
It makes so much sense. We've talked about this darker side of trauma, but
Mm.
what about the other side of the coin? What about resilience? Are there individuals who experience trauma and not only survive but thrive?
Absolutely. Resilience is an amazing human capacity. And Shapiro, she explores this through the concept of post-traumatic growth, which suggests that even when we're facing, immense suffering, we can find meaning, strength, and even positive transformation.
It's like finding a pearl in an oyster. The trauma is the irritant, but it ultimately leads to the creation of something beautiful and precious.
What a lovely analogy. It reminds us that healing is possible even when trauma leaves these deep scars. It doesn't have to define us. We can learn to navigate our triggers, manage our emotions, and build a life that's filled with joy and connection and purpose.
So how can we foster resilience? Is it an innate quality, or can it be cultivated?
Well, it's a bit of both nature and nurture.
Yeah.
Some people seem to have a natural predisposition towards it, but it can also be developed. Supportive relationships, healthy coping mechanisms, and a sense of agency all play a really important role.
And Shapiro talks about the importance of grounding techniques.
Right.
Like focusing on our senses to kind of bring ourselves back to the present moment when we feel overwhelmed.
Exactly. Grounding techniques are a great way to regulate the nervous system and manage anxiety, and they can be incredibly simple. Noticing the feeling of your feet on the floor or the sounds around you or the taste of a piece of fruit, for example.
It's like hitting the pause button on those racing thoughts and those overwhelming emotions. It gives us a moment to reconnect with our bodies and regain a sense of control.
Exactly. And the more we practice these techniques, the more readily available they become when we need them. It's like building a resilience muscle.
We've talked about the impact of trauma and the importance of resilience. So how can nurses kind of integrate these insights into their practice?
That's the crucial question. And it all starts with self-awareness. As nurses, you're constantly exposed to suffering. It's essential to recognize how your own experiences with trauma might be influencing your interactions with patients.
So it's about kind of doing our own inner work, understanding our triggers, and developing, healthy coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
We can't pour from an empty cup.
That's a fantastic way to put it. Self-care isn't a luxury. It's an absolute necessity for compassionate and effective care.
And then it's about bringing that awareness into our interactions with
It,
patients, isn't it?
yeah.
Listening with empathy, validating their experiences, and creating an environment where they feel safe and heard.
Absolutely. And being mindful of our language is incredibly important.
Yeah.
Using trauma-informed language can make a huge difference. Instead of asking what's wrong with you,
Yeah.
we might try asking what happened to you.
That's such a subtle but powerful shift in perspective. It
Yeah.
it moves away from blame and judgment and embraces curiosity and understanding.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It acknowledges that our patients' behaviors might be a response to trauma, not a personal failing.
Beyond self-awareness and language, what else can we do?
Well, we can be advocates for systemic change. We can push for trauma-informed policies in our hospitals and healthcare systems. And of course, we can educate our colleagues about the impact of trauma and the importance of providing compassionate care.
It's about fostering a culture of healing, I guess,
Yeah.
that recognizes the pervasiveness of trauma and responds with understanding and support.
And don't forget about empowering our patients.
Yeah.
Both Shapiro and Vanderkolk, they emphasize that healing isn't something that's done to us. It's something that we actively participate in. So we can connect our patients with, resources, support groups, therapies that can help them reclaim their
We
lives.
could be their cheerleaders, kind of guiding them towards hope and healing.
And we can celebrate their successes no matter how small they may seem. Every step towards healing is a victory worth celebrating.
This deep dive has been incredible, and we're not even finished yet. I already feel, so much more equipped to approach my patients with greater compassion and understanding. What else can we expect in the final part of this exploration?
Well, I'm excited to share some specific strategies for working with trauma survivors. We'll be discussing some practical tips for managing triggers and fostering resilience.
That sounds incredibly valuable. I'm eager to learn more. We'll be back soon for the final leg of our deep dive into trauma and healing. So don't go anywhere. Right, we're back. And for this final part of our deep dive into trauma and healing, it feels like we've kind of journeyed through the darkness, and now we're coming out into the light, armed with knowledge and hope. And I'm especially looking forward to those practical strategies that you mentioned earlier for actually working with trauma survivors.
Yeah, it's a beautiful way to put it, actually. We've explored the complexities of trauma, its impact on the brain, the body, relationships, and the challenges it poses to healing. But now let's focus on what you as nurses can actually do to support your patients on their journey to recovery.
Yeah, let's talk practicalities.
Yeah.
What are some tangible things we can do to help patients kind of manage those really overwhelming emotions and physical sensations that trauma can trigger?
Or remember those grounding techniques we discussed earlier?
Hmm.
They're a fantastic starting point. So encourage your patients to engage their senses, to feel the coolness of a washcloth on their skin, or to
Hmm.
focus on the rhythm of their breath, or to listen to calming music. These simple acts can help kind of draw their attention away from distressing thoughts and sensations and bring them back to the present moment.
So it's like creating a sense of safety and stability for them.
Exactly, and it also helps them to reclaim a sense of control. Trauma often leaves people feeling powerless at the mercy of their emotions and their physical sensations. So grounding techniques can empower them to kind of manage those experiences and regain a sense of agency.
What about those moments when a patient is clearly triggered, perhaps kind of reliving a traumatic experience? How can we respond in a way that's both supportive and therapeutic?
Well, firstly, remember that you are not a therapist, and it's not your role to kind of delve into the specifics of their trauma.
Right.
Your role is to provide a sense of safety and containment. So speak in a calm and reassuring voice. Maintain a safe physical distance and avoid making any kind of sudden movements that might startle them.
So it's about creating a haven of calm amidst the storm.
Precisely. And if they're willing, you could guide them through a simple grounding exercise, encourage them to focus on their breath or describe their surroundings. The key is to help them regulate their nervous system and bring them back to the present.
What about those patients who seem kind of stuck in a constant state of fight or flight or freeze,
Yeah.
even when there's no immediate danger? How can we help them to kind of break free from that chronic hyperarousal?
Well, that's where movement and body-based therapies can be incredibly effective.
Right.
So encourage your patients to engage in activities that help release pent-up energy and reconnect with their bodies, like, walking, dancing, swimming, yoga.
It's about getting those feel-good endorphins flowing, isn't it? And helping them to shift out of that constant tension.
Yeah, and it's about helping them to develop a sense of mastery over their bodies. Trauma often leads to a disconnect between mind and body, leaving people feeling trapped and out of control. So movement can help to kind of bridge that gap and restore a sense of agency.
So we're helping patients to manage triggers, regulate their nervous systems, reconnect with their bodies.
Yeah.
But what about the emotional side of healing? How can we support patients as they kind of process those painful memories and emotions?
Well, remember the power of narrative we discussed.
Yeah.
Encourage your patients to find safe and supportive spaces to share their stories. This could be through journaling or talking to a trusted friend or family member or seeking professional therapy.
So it's about giving a voice to those silenced experiences, kind of integrating those fragmented memories and finding meaning in their suffering.
Yeah, and it's also about acknowledging their strength and resilience. Trauma survivors have endured unimaginable hardships, and their ability to cope and keep going is a testament to their inner strength.
Mm.
Let them know that you see that strength, that you believe in their capacity to heal, and that you're there to support them every step of the way.
That's so empowering. It's like we're not just treating their physical ailments, we're nurturing their spirits.
That's the very essence of holistic care, isn't it? It's about recognizing the interconnectedness of mind, body, and spirit and approaching healing from a place of compassion and empathy and respect.
This deep dive has been an incredible journey. We've explored the depths of trauma, but we've also emerged with a profound sense of hope. What's the final takeaway message you want to leave our listeners with?
I think Helen Keller's journey of finding her voice and selfhood amidst unimaginable challenges offers a really powerful inspiration for us all. As nurses, you have the privilege of walking alongside your patients as they embark on their own journeys of healing. Remember that every interaction, no matter how small, is an opportunity to plant seeds of hope, nurture resilience, and empower your patients to reclaim their lives.
Beautifully said. To our listeners, we encourage you to reflect on Helen Keller's journey and ask yourselves, what steps can you take to help your patients find their own voices and reclaim their power in the healing process? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into trauma and healing. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep caring.